You're opening more than one school every day.
Think of us as preschools, which run 1,700 preschools in the country, and we have 54 K-12 schools. We started solving early childhood education in India, and we saw that huge gap. We then said, let's just organize this whole marketplace, and that's when the branded preschools started, and that was how EuroKids was born. Elon Musk, think about all the Mark Zuckerbergs. I think they're all geeks, right?
Mukesh Ambani and Gautam Buddha has same kind of obsession, and because of that obsession, Buddha went to extreme left from the materialistic way. Mukesh Ambani is going to right. You opened 1 or 2 schools, right?
2 preschools.
2 preschools. तो वो change कैसे हुआ मिकी माउस से schools पे?
Not only there is a need for content, there are many things in that value chain which are missing, and we can solve for it.
We will be a book publishing player. And then how did it evolve into the big giant?
A lot of young people that I now meet want to now build in India for India. And that's a big change, right? And then when we saw opportunities to go out there and double on and buy businesses which we could bolt on to our platform, there was a need for capital.
Why did you not go for the VC funding? And if you were 22 again, zero capital, nothing, how will you find that $1 billion opportunity need? What are you learning nowadays, sir? Are you reading something interesting?
book तो मैं पढ़ता हूँ, so yes. Interestingly, I'm reading a book which I just got started yesterday. It's called The Geek Way. And it's a very interesting take on, when you think about geeks, right? The word geek. What are geeks? You would think about geeks as people who are
Nerdy?
Nerdy in a very tech way, right? By saying all the time, very focused on technology, doesn't interact with the world outside, fully very inward focus. That is the geek right there. And this is about a book which I just got started. It's called The Geek Way. And it says that the geeks are the ones who go out there and build really great stuff in this new world there. And the geeks are folks who are actually very passionate about what they do. Now, when you think about a geek, you are thinking about him being an introvert, not being an extrovert, only building something in the tech space, but he's very passionate about it, and he's got a very different take on life, which means that he doesn't care for what people think about him. He's passionately building something. And this new world order now is rewarding those people who are actually going the geek way. And is there a playbook that one can learn from the geeks who are building businesses, that you can kind of say that there is a geek way of building a business? Actually, very different take. I haven't read the book in entirety. I got very fascinated when I just read the short summary of somebody who had recommended this. So I picked up that book and started reading it. So just not completed it, but
Interesting.
It's a very interesting take at saying how to build businesses the geek way.
Super interesting. Are you a geek?
No, I don't consider myself a geek.
Okay.
That's why I'm learning something which potentially I don't have per se. So I am not a geek.
I'm sure there must be some examples of mentioned in the book, but I want to know from your life, who are some geek founders that you know of?
All these guys, right? I'm saying, think about Elon Musk, think about all the Mark Zuckerbergs. I think they're all geeks, right?
India, if you specific about.
India,
जब आप किताब पढ़ रहे थे तो आपको लगा कि यार ऐसा कौन से इंडियन फाउंडर की इमेज आपके दिमाग में है?
actually nahi aayi, because this book is so much Western focused per se in the way that they present it. And like I said, I've just got started reading it. As I read more, maybe there are so many founders in India as well. If I'm saying Narayana Murthy, when he built Infosys, and his own kind of take on how he built it with the passionate, manic-like kind of focus per se, you can say that even he was building it the geek way, right? When you think about a geek like that, so I'm saying Narayana Murthy is a geek. Possibly.
Do you have any questions for him? Because we are hosting him soon in Bangalore.
You must ask him, are you a geek?
I'll definitely do that.
I'm intrigued. What is the dictionary this on geek? What does the dictionary.com tell you? What is a geek? Oh,
There is an education company, Geek for Geeks.
Geeks for Geeks?
Yeah, it's a very famous. So Geek for Geek is I'll tell you what's is famous for. कंप्यूटर कोडिंग पढ़ाते हैं और इन्होंने एक लर्निंग का मेथड लिया, लर्निंग थ्रू मीम्स. ड्यूलिंगो ऐसा बहुत करता था बिकॉज ऑफ देयर मॉडल ऑफ एंगेजमेंट. वो नोटिफिकेशन देते थे, मीक देते थे, और उन्होंने गीक फॉर गीक्स ने उसको कॉपी करा. और इसके बाद अब जो भी मीम निकालता है, दैट्स लाइक बाय सो मेनी लर्नर्स. सो वन वे दे आर काइंड ऑफ एंटरटेनिंग, एड्यूटेनमेंट कर रहे हैं शुरुआत से, फिर वहाँ से वो हुक करते हैं स्टूडेंट्स को टू गो डीपर, बिकॉज दैट्स एन ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म. देयर इज नो टीचर जो आपको बोल रहा है पढ़ लो.
Nice. There's a coding platform.
Yeah, it's a coding
platform helping people code.
Yeah. And the Indian company,
Geek for Geek.
Geek for Geek.
Bilkul. I'm saying, you select something and then kind of go out there and make that possible, right? I'm saying that's really been the even for us. I'll kind of quickly segue. If you got any questions like that,
I have so many questions, but I'll try to maybe just
kind of segue. See, I think one of my key insights about building anything more than I'm saying building in India or any other place is that we took education and we took not all things in education, but selected one specific area and went really deep, which is early childhood education, which is EuroKids. With EuroKids Preschools, we actually selected one. So when you want to think about creating a business, you're actually going out there and wanting to solve problems. And when you think about problems to be solved in education and in the context of India, you will really say, yeah, there is so much things to solve, right? बहुत कुछ है solve करने के लिए इंडिया में. But when you take a general approach like that I will solve many things in education, I want to solve everything, maybe you kind of become I'm saying there are so many things that you can't put your hands into that you lose your focus on. So at least we found it valuable, and me personally found it valuable that we selected one niche saying early childhood education. We take that within education itself and go out there and solve it, and really be very obsessive about solving it and really go deep within it to solve for it. So we selected, when we started off in 2001 and 2002, we started for solving for early childhood education in India, which back then was, let's say, what an effort which was done in a very disorganized way, where people would teach within their own homes, within their own courtyards, and would try and bring content, curriculum which they understood. Market mein jaakar, they would bring equipment and teaching aids and start with the teaching program. But they were not really in the education program. They were actually doing the care program, right? More welfare and care rather than education. And we actually changed that to say we'll organize this whole market. We'll do what is child first. We'll do what is developmentally appropriate. And we saw that huge gap. And we then said, let's just organize this whole marketplace. And that's when the branded preschools started. And that was how EuroKids was born.
Got it. A couple of things here. Number one, the word obsession. No, this is very interesting to me because just yesterday, Rhythm sir also said this, ki Mukesh Ambani and Gautam Buddha has same kind of obsession. And because of that obsession, Buddha went to extreme left. From the materialistic wire, Mukesh Ambani is going to right. So having that obsession is very, very important. And in this context, help me understand, 1998, you started with a media house company, right? As a music book publishing thing. And that was also an interesting story. Some Dutch player wanted to come to India and you kind of, collaborated in some sense. But help me understand, what was the first insight? We will be a book publishing player. And then how did it evolve into the big giant? Some people say it's a unknown edtech unicorn. Tell me, give me that insight. So book publishing se wo kaise hua?
So the book publishing idea was actually a very simple idea, where we would do children's book publishing in India, and we would do licensed children's book publishing, which means we were licensees for Disney, for Mattel, for BBC Worldwide. We used to bring the books of Enid Blyton into India. We'd bring Phantom the Ghost Who Walks. We'd brought Tintin into India. So that was a licensed children's book publishing business. It's a very simple business where we said, we'll bring live titles into India, which was earlier actually what I call as the remainders of the West. Where instead of doing that, we'll actually bring live titles. We'll print and publish in India and market in India. and make it affordable for young children. And we'll try and make languages as well. So our first product was actually the Mickey Mouse comic.
How did you get this idea?
So this was so the children's book publishing was not our idea per se. This was actually the idea of a Danish house called Egmont, which is what you refer to the Dutch there. It's actually the Danish house called Egmont, which had this idea because they always used to do this in other parts of the world as well.
Right.
And they wanted to start this business in India. So it was not our idea. It was actually the Danes who had this idea to bring this business into India as well. So I actually joined into this business in that 1999 as a professional into this company. So this was Egmont at that time, which is a Danish company who had a mandate to do children's book publishing program in India, the similar kind of a publishing program that they've done in the past. That is really how it started.
Super interesting. And then, 2001, you opened 1 or 2 schools, right?
2 preschools.
2 preschools. तो वो चेंज कैसे हुआ मिकी माउस से schools पे?
So from children's book publishing to preschools, that journey came about because we had content available for preschools in the country and we wanted to become content providers to only preschools. That was the only aspiration. The book publishers the. As book publishers, we had content and we wanted to provide content to preschools in the country. I was tasked with the agenda to go out there and figure out whether there is a need for content. And I came back very excited saying, not only there is a need for content, there are many things in that value chain which are missing and we can solve for it. And that came in the form of the insight around saying the infrastructure piece is missing. The content piece is of course missing, which is developmentally appropriate. It's a completely fragmented, disorganized market per se there. We can add so much more value, and that's when the birth of the idea called EuroKids.
2 schools. And then within 3 years, you opened 100 schools. 5 years, you opened 400 schools. Last year, you opened close to 500 schools. What? It's like, आप हर एक दिन में मतलब you're opening more than 1 school every day.
Yeah, they're preschools though. They're preschools.
How do you do that?
They're preschools.
And when you say it's school, what does the caveat mean? It's preschool, huh?
It's preschool. So it's not schools, it's preschools. So these are early childhood learning centers. And our insight was that we would need to build this in every community, every neighborhood. So it needs to be a community and a neighborhood preschool concept where children can actually walk to a preschool rather than take buses and the rest and come to that place. So the idea was to also make it a convenient option as well, because you're talking about very young children, ages 2 to 5 years of age. So we said we'll make it into a very convenient neighborhood option, which was the reason why it is in some sense not just local, it's actually hyper local, right? It's only 2 kilometers radius that I want to put up a preschool there, which is the reason why we think that to serve India, you will need so many number of preschools, right? You take Bangalore, which is one of our largest market. We have more than 130 plus preschools, which means that every neighborhood now has a EuroKids preschool.
Does Bangalore need more preschools?
I think there is a headroom to do another 30 more in the next, let's say, 2 years' time, taking it to 160. And maybe as Bangalore grows with its density of population and also grows in the outer areas, we can plan more and more. So at least our plan is that behind every 1 lakh population, we should have 1 preschool per se there in a dense kind of a location. So Bangalore will have what about a crore of population per se there, 90 lakhs or so. We should have had 90 per se there. We are already 130.
That's super interesting. When you say ki you have 1700, close to 1500 schools right now?
Close to about 1700 preschools.
इसमें से कुछ CBSE प्री स्कूल में तो CBSE नहीं आता ना?
Preschool में CBSE. So the K to 12. So we now have 2, let's say, verticals. One is a preschool vertical, which runs preschools, and then we have K to 12, which is kindergarten to grade 12 schools. These are our 2 verticals that we have. So first we took from children's book publishing, we went into preschools, and from preschools we are now in K-12 schools. We've now exited the preschools, exited the publishing side of the business and focused only on preschools and schools. Publishing we still do, but not for retail, but we do it for our own captive audience per se. That's really what we do. And these are the only two segments that we do. So which is the reason why I said we took one and we went deep and we solved for it. Then we decided in 2009 that we will venture into K to 12, which is actually a natural extension to our preschools.
Right.
Okay, parents said, we've had a great experience with our preschools. Why can't you please extend it into primary, middle school and senior school? We said, okay, we'll try this out. And that's how we started our K to 12 schools.
There's so many questions here, but just for the paucity of time, let's dive into the K-12 thing. How many of them are CBSE, ICSE, IGCSE, IB?
So
You have all of them, right?
yes, Shabam. We have, so again, like I said, we take one segment and we want to go really deep at this. And we now have 54 schools. And these 54 schools are K to 12 schools, which is kindergarten to grade 12 school. And our plan is to be able to, our plan has always been able to serve India, and by giving as many options as possible to parents under a variety of services. So we have schools which cater to CBSE and ICSE. We have schools that cater to Cambridge and offer the IGCSE and the A levels. And we also have schools which cater to the international baccalaureate as well. So we got all formats of schools, but they are all day schools there, which are from morning to evening. We don't have a residential format yet. That's really what we do in K to 12. So think of us as preschools, which run 1,700 preschools in the country, and we have 54 K to 12 schools.
Super interesting. That help me understand the persona, or I would say the mindset of a parent, which is sending his or her kid to CBSE versus IGSE versus IB versus, I don't know,
State board school.
State board.
So see, the bulk of the schools in the country, so we've got about 1.5 million schools in the country. The bulk of the schools in the country will be state board schools. CBSE and ICSE put together will have about 32,000 schools. IB and the Cambridge schools will be about 600 schools. In the context of India, it's
Similar.
really a
Same way the
pyramid like
basic
many
pollution.
other places. But a lot of, I'm saying, and ultimately as, let's say, parents desire better for themselves and for their children, they're looking for what that better really means. So they moved from being state board to CBSE, ICSE, and some from CBSE, ICSE have moved to international curriculum, because they equate some bit of the international curriculum to it being better.
Right.
Sometimes it's the facilities that are better, but it's more than the facilities. Sometimes the content is better. So they're looking for better for themselves and for their children. Now, what is that better? I think they just want their children to have better exposure than what they've experienced so far. And that's the quest of that better. The Cambridge program or the International Baccalaureate program, which is the IB, is accepted all across the world. And there are world-leading, let's say, schools which offer it. Some of them also have aspiration of study abroad. So at the undergrad level itself, we see many students want to go to universities abroad, not just in India. They think of Cambridge and IB schools giving them an edge over some of the state and the national board schools. So there's a variety of reasons why I think parents prefer different kind of, let's say, schools. But I think this is just the evolution of the parent who desires better than what they've experienced in their life.
So the proof of the pudding is to actually eat it. So tell me, आपने अपने बच्चे को कौन से स्कूल में भेजा है?
Bilkul, I think the proof of the pudding is always when you eat it. So my son Arav went to EuroKids, playgroup and nursery.
Okay.
And then went to our first Euro school in Airoli, from junior kindergarten all the way to grade 10. And he finished his IGCSE. And after that, because he wanted to do a diploma program in IB, which we did not have, then he went to another school. Because in Bombay, we did not have a IB school.
Interesting. I was asking, sir, I was just coming in, I had a certain view on certain thing, and I was just understanding my view is a function of what? It was a function of my surrounding, which was actually a function of the choices my parents made. School is something which will shape you immensely, but you won't choose your school, your parents would. So why did you choose IGSC for your kid?
So, I think Arav, at that point, so international curriculum has a worldview which is a slightly more expanded worldview and gives variety of choices and flexibility to students. I think what I wanted was a worldview which was expanded, which covered not just, I'm saying, the context of the past and the present, but I really wanted a worldview which was more expanded for him. I also wanted him to have the flexibility of different kind of choices and options, which is the reason why I opted for it. One of the other reasons was that I think my son was also very clear that he wanted to kind of look at education outside of the country. So one of the reasons why that was also, but that was not primarily the reason. When I made the choice for him to shift from a ICSE school to our Cambridge curriculum, and he made that shift in grade 5. We weren't clear what he will do after grade 12.
Okay,
But we just wanted the flexibility and the richness of the program.
Maybe my data is skewed because all the people that I'm meeting, so I was recently doing Sujit sir from Udan.
Yeah.
His son was speaking English. छोटा सा बच्चा इंग्लिश बोल रहा है. मैंने सोचा ये क्या हो रहा है, एक अलग ही सेंस में बोल रहा है. तो he said कि ये इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में जा रहे हैं बैंगलोर में. एंड वो बैंगलोर में भी एक आदर्श फार्म रिट्रीट है. वो एक अलग ही इलाका है. वहाँ पर सारे फाउंडर्स रहते हैं और वो सारे फाउंडर्स एक अलग ही जगह पे भेजते हैं अपने बच्चों को. One thing that I'm gaining is pick up a field, spend some time, go really figure out a niche, go really deep. There are a lot of things that I want to ask from the past, but Hilpi, let's come to present and future. If you were 22 again, zero capital, nothing. What is that? How will you find that $1 billion opportunity niche? And if you have to, build again in education because of a, give me some specific content that you believe that this is a good niche to solve for. Probably you are not going to solve this for next 2-3 years because you're busy, impacting life of 1 million people for next 3 years.
Yeah, it's like this. If you look at a country like India, which offers so many opportunities to go out there and solve for so many things, right? Look at healthcare. I'm saying healthcare is a great area that I'm saying India needs support of private capital. There is the government that supports it, but there is also private players that can greatly support healthcare of different formats. Look at diagnostics, look at hospitals per se, look at variety of things that people are trying to solve for. I'm saying you have discovery platforms for doctors. I actually think that there are many sectors in India, if you were to think about it, that you can go out there and solve for, including sectors like I'm saying, we as Indians want to be entertained, right? Which means that there are entertainment formats that you can kind of start. I'm saying it's not just only there are so many needs that India has that you can go out there and solve. Housing, for that matter. I'm saying it's a great sector for solving stuff, whether it is an affordable budget housing to the value. Now there's a new term on value luxury and luxury. You name it. There is so much to do. But the point that I want to underscore is, rather than solve for many things per se there in a sector, when you think about housing as a sector and you want to kind of straddle everything, maybe that might not be the best attempt, but to take one and to really be great at that, maybe that is what, at least our, what we've done, our thesis has been.
Just to double click on, what is something that you really want, but nobody is solving for? Can you give a pinpointed niche opportunity like this? जो आपको बहुत मतलब you need it in your life, but nobody is giving that you. Or maybe think like this way from your life, or think like because you're solving for education, you have a lot of data, you're doing a lot of number crunching in this. So what's something in particular in education also?
Sure. No, I think in India now in the past about 10 years, many a good founder has come out to solve many a things, right? I'm saying, and many a times you've also not thought about that, and people have started to solve for it. I'm saying quick commerce is a great example of how people didn't need to be
Creating a future.
spoiled about 10-minute deliveries, right? कुछ जरूरत ही नहीं थी, अब आधे घंटे में भी आ जाता, but they've solved for it in a different way. So I'm saying it's not only tapping into a need per se, so what creating something as well. I think the last 10 years has been fantastic as far as India and India founders are concerned in coming out there and solving for things per se. I think if we continue with this clip per se, which I'm very hopeful for, because a lot of young people that I now meet want to now build in India for India.
Correct.
And that's a big change, right? I've seen now even kids who want to go outside of the country, study in one of the best universities, but want to come back to build in India for India. And that's great. And I think, and slowly but surely, we will also have global aspirations as well, because we will no longer only serve India and India's needs. We could serve outside of the country as well, which I think is great, right? I think we're getting to that point right now.
जितने भी हमने बिजनेसेस करे ना सर, मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर वीसी फंडेड बिजनेसेस. बट जब मैं आपकी हिस्ट्री देखा था, कभी कोई आप में एक स्टेक ले रहा था, कभी आप किसी और में स्टेक ले रहे थे. द डिफरेंस वाज कि बेसिकली यू हैव एक्सपोजर टू प्राइवेट इक्विटी. Help me understand, as if any young founder is watching this, help me understand how private equity shaped your business decisions, and why did you not go for the VC funding? And then, was it a function of how you started? How was it?
So it's a function of need for capital, right? Firstly, the EuroKids preschool side of the business, which was distributed largely through franchise, because it's franchised owned, franchised operated, didn't need too much of capital. It was a fairly asset light model, and because of it being an asset light model, it did not have a requirement for too much of capital, and we grew very rapidly. But at a point when we wanted to open up K-12 schools, and we were clear that we did not want to distribute it via franchising and wanted to do it through the cell phone route, K-12, and that was a physical school of sorts, clearly the need for capital was felt. So the first time that we went out there, we raised capital was in 2008 for our school that came up in 2009. So if you ask me, our need for capital came in when we started to expand into the K-12, which needed the physical schools, and was not in its truest sense asset light. Of course, we are still asset light because we still don't need to necessarily own the land and the building, and we kind of rent out the land and the building, which is a purpose-built one for a 30-year period, so that we can eventually do more. So we also tried to make it as asset light as possible in that way, but it's still asset heavy.
Okay.
There. And then when we saw opportunities to go out there and double on and buy businesses which we could bolt on to our platform, there was a need for capital. So if you ask me, the need of our business dictated the need for capital, which is the reason why we went out there and raised capital. We've had private equity sponsors since 2013. So we're fairly familiar with the private equity world. And I actually think that we've learned a lot as a business in terms of the financial discipline that it takes to sometimes operating a business and running a business, which sometimes a founder is not, right? Because he's so deep into building his product and his service per se that he loses discipline on various elements, and especially on the financial side, that sometimes private equity brings that focus. I've actually found it valuable that they're not just capital providers, but also set a certain kind of regimen which actually helps businesses to perform better financially.
Can we say that if you're creating a category creative businesses can be only funded through VCs and not private equity?
Not necessarily. I think venture capitalists take possession much earlier. Private equity comes in much later in the life cycle. But I'm saying it's just the pools of capital which have a certain kind of a risk appetite. But the fact is that capital is and the availability of capital is a great enabler for a business, right? Many a business have kind of failed because of not being able to go out there and raise capital at the right time, per se. So I think to gauge that and to be able to attract good quality capital also is a knack of a good business, right?
There's one important thing which is kind of fascinating to me. Education may outcomes take time, right? You see some time to see the outcome. Second thing is when you were telling it to the PE folks, we want to venture into K-12 space which require physical thing. One obvious answer a question that an investor would have is this is capital intensive. So how did you long recovery in capital? How did you convince?
Correct. So it helped that our profile of business had both the preschools as well as the schools. And the preschool side of the business were not very capital intensive, was actually fairly profitable and generated surpluses, which we could invest into our K to 12. So it helped that we had this profile of a business, which was both preschools as well as schools. And schools as well, like I said, it was not essential for us we thought very differently about buying land and putting up the building because we were very clear that we were not a real estate business, but an education business. What we wanted was actually the land and the building to be built purposefully for our needs. So we actually did a build to suit model where we tied up with real estate companies, developers, high net worth individuals who would then build the school as per our requirements and lease it to us for the 30-year period. So we've done
Financial engineering.
So we've done in the sense it is also an asset light model, right? In that sense. So
Okay.
You don't need to have the land owned by you and the building owned by you to
Right.
kind of do so, because the character of that company is a real estate company, right? And there are real estate players who want rental yield. So we kind of worked with people who wanted rental yield.
Again, time check.
Sorry, I have to leave now.
Okay. But no worries, sir. I'll respect your time.
Yeah, all the
Pleasure
very
meeting
best
you,
to
sir.
you for all your efforts there.
Thanks.